A downside to living among psychological primitives is that some pathogenic beliefs are proclaimed publicly as unassailable truth. One of them is the claim that talents are inborn to only a handful of people, leaving the majority destined for mediocrity the rest of their lives. According to the modern version of this myth, talents are inherited in the form of DNA strands derived from parents, including important snippets of DNA called genes. Those who promote this myth imagine that these molecules are ultimately responsible for everything we are, but most especially our abilities. If your parents showed little talent for math or art or sports or business, tough luck, these people will tell you, because that'll be your fate too. There are several things wrong with that fatalistic vision. One is that most genes are responsible for only generalized traits, and they often become activated in combination with other genes, which smears out their net effects even more. There are no math genius genes, or artist genes, or NFL quarterback genes, or corporate CEO genes. The specificity people imagine when they banter about genes doesn't exist. Another problem is that genes are activated only for a limited time. They sit around doing nothing as long as you do the same, and they start working for you only after you start working for yourself by seeking to develop some aspect of your life. The most important problem with genetic fatalism was discovered recently by the International Human Genome Project, which became able to specify all the DNA sequences inside each of us. The researchers found that 99.95% of the DNA sequences within every human being who ever lived are exactly the same. Or put another way, all humans are literally created equal in every important respect, as America's Declaration of Independence says. This equality extends to our talents too. The equality of people irrespective of their sex, race, and ethnicity seems counterintuitive. It is obvious that people differ from one another, and that at least some of those differences, such as height, skin color, general features, and susceptibilities to certain diseases, are definitely inherited from parents. Inborn talent true believers have long claimed that the differences go much deeper. Their error comes from overgeneralization, because only 5/100ths of our DNA, of a percent of our DNA, varies from one person to the next, and even many of those variances don't contribute to producing different traits. There is a good reason why we are fundamentally so similar to one another. To see how it all came about, let's follow the lines of your genealogy way back, counting just parents. You had two parents, so your previous generation consisted of two people. They each had two parents, giving you 4 grandparents. They each had two parents, giving you 8 great-grandparents. The number of relatives doubles with each generation. 8 becomes 16, which becomes 32, which becomes 64, which becomes 128, and so on. No flags so far, but let's keep going. Going back 20 generations increases the number of your ancestors to a little more than 1 million people. Going back 30 generations makes that number more than 1 billion. 30 generations is not that long ago. The length of a human generation is roughly 25 years. So 30 generations is only something like 750 years ago. Going back 40 generations gives you about 1 trillion potential ancestors way back in the Middle Ages, about 1,000 years ago. A look at this chart will show that there never was a time when there was 1 trillion humans on Earth. There wasn't even 1 billion people until the start of the 19th century. Everyone needs 2 parents, so where did we go wrong? We went wrong by assuming that there was no inbreeding in the past, when in fact there was a terrific amount of it. Humans are among the most inbred beings on the planet. The nomadic, multi-generational Stone Age family bands who were our ancestors roamed the earth in relative isolation. They had no one to breed with except themselves. And even when there was a neighboring band, that two-band group would become inbred very quickly. After agriculture was invented, most people stayed in place, so they interbred with their neighbors. Humans are doubly inbred. They not only bred with small numbers of other people, but with only those who lived nearby. So over centuries, the same old DNA got swapped from one human to another. That double inbreeding is why Ancestry DNA, 23andMe, and other DNA testing services can tell you roughly where your inbred ancestors lived long ago. Everything is starting to change now because people are much more mobile and are much choosier about the people that they have children with. But humans are too young of a species to overcome eons of inbreeding going back to the Stone Age, even though mutations in DNA were occurring regularly the whole time. So what are we to make of people who truly stand out? People like Nobel Prize-winning theoretical physicist Richard Feynman. Feynman was universally recognized as being one of the greatest scientists of the 20th century. Are we to imagine that people like him are genetic freaks whose special inborn talents enable them to learn quicker and achieve easier than other people? Let's ask him. Someone once did. And here was his reply.
You asked me if an ordinary person, by studying hard, would get to be able to imagine these things like I imagine. Of course, I was an ordinary person who studied hard. There's no miracle people. It just happens they got interested in this thing and they learned all this stuff. They're just people. There's no talent, a special miracle ability to understand quantum mechanics or a miracle ability to imagine electromagnetic fields that comes without practice and reading and learning and study. So if you say you take an ordinary person who's willing to devote a great deal of time and study and work and thinking and mathematics and time, then he's become a scientist.
Or put another way, we are all miracle people who can achieve anything we wish so long as we are willing to dedicate the effort everyone else would need to put in over the years to achieve the same thing. You don't reach your potential by doing that because no one has a predefined ceiling. We extend our potential whenever we grasp for more in life.